All right, everyone. So let me talk about VMware technology first. So let's say that we are in a year, maybe 2001. Okay. Let's say that we are in year 2001. Now in 2001, the virtualization technology was not at its peak. I mean, it wasn't like, everyone was using virtualization. People were still dependent on the physical infrastructure and they were using the physical environment. Okay. Now, let me tell you that how a physical environment used to operate, what were the challenges, and why there was a need for VMware. Because, there has to be a need. Without that need, you would not be using the technology. There has to be some gap, there has to be some loophole in your existing infrastructure or in your existing technology that you have. And that is the reason, you think about, adopting a different technology. And that is the reason you think about adopting something else. Okay, because you're not happy with what you have currently. Yeah. So with physical environment, what you would have is, for example, if I talk about any pharmaceutical company, okay, there are so many pharmaceutical companies out there, but if you take any one of them, so generally what would happen is in any large organization, basically, I should say not specific to pharmaceutical, but I should say any large organization, they have multiple environments. So they would have something called as a development environment, okay, wherein people play around, with their application, see how things are moving along. When they do something, would it work? Would it not work? Would it break something for them? So that is what a development environment is, where people keep playing around, with their application to see how it is working. When the development environment, responds well and everything is looking okay, then what would happen is that, you have something called as a pre-prod, or you might have a QA. Okay, you might call it by different names, but you can think about it like anything. You might have a development, you might have a QA, and then you in the end, then you would have a production. Okay, so you have a development environment where you keep playing around. Okay, and then you have a pre-prod wherein you are happy with your development. Now you want to take a step further. Okay, that is basically a QA for you. And then the production is basically you're rolling out things in production for end users, for everyone. Okay. Now, if you do not have virtualization, what would happen is you need to buy physical machines. Okay. And in an organization, there are many applications. So for example, you would have database, you would have front-end servers, you would have back-end servers, you would have platforms where the developers are coding your application, trying to build something. They all need machines. Everything needs a machine, everything needs a server. So what would happen is, for example, you have a database server, okay, or you have a new application which requires a database, and now you want to roll that out. So what you would do is basically you will first test it in the development, how it is working. Then you would move to QA, see more integrations with it. And then finally you will roll out in the production when everything is looking good to you. Okay. Now in 2001, for example, if you are in year 2001, and you do not have virtualization, so what you would have to do is basically you will have to buy servers. So you will have to buy one server, which will be for development. Then you would buy another server, which will be basically for your QA environment. And then in the end, you're going to buy the last server, which will be your for production. Now, this is basically for one application. Okay. So this is basically, I should say, one application, because that same application will have multiple environments. This is very common across the organizations, that you will have a development, a pre-prod, and a prod. So this is for one application, you need to have 3 different servers. Now, the catch is that you cannot have a different configuration over here. So you cannot have, for example, let's say 5 GB RAM here, and then you would say that, for my pre-prod, let me make it 10 GB RAM over here. And for production, I'll say 20 GB RAM. Okay. If you do this, then you are not actually honestly testing your application, because what you would see in a 5 GB RAM, when it comes to load testing, when it comes to application performance, will be very different as compared to on a production machine, which is basically on a 20 GB RAM. Okay, so what you would do is you would have a uniform hardware. So that is, if you have a CPU, for example, which belongs to a gold category, okay, then you need to have that CPU, the same CPU over here of gold category. You need to have that same CPU of gold category, and it will be applicable in production as well. Same would be applicable of RAM. If you are going with 20 GB RAM in the production, then you need to make sure that you have 20 GB RAM in all your boxes. Okay. Now, this is for one application. You have to get 3 boxes. Think about it, in an organization, you would have so many applications, and for every application, you are basically getting 3 servers. And that's that's a lot of servers to go with. Okay. Now there are concerns. I mean, you might say that, what's the problem in having servers? I mean, I can buy servers and I can live with it and I can try it out things and everything would work fine. I completely agree with you. Everything would work fine. Then you would say that why do we need virtualization, or what is wrong with this current setup? Okay. Now we see a picture of the current setup, and now let me tell you what is wrong with this setup. Okay. Now that would answer a lot of questions for you. Okay, let me quickly wipe this off. Okay, now I'll start one at a time to tell you what was wrong with the last picture. Okay, the first thing that was absolutely wrong is capex. That is, when you buy a server, you have to pay money for it. Okay, now even if you call up HP, Dell, any vendors, any server vendor out there, and you tell them that in today's world that you're looking for a Xeon server with say about 100 GB RAM, or like 60 GB RAM, and a basic configuration if you also go for, they would be charging you a lot of money. It's not that a branded server is something very cheap, or it's very I should say it's very economical. It's not that. I mean, you have to literally pay for it. And when you have so many servers that you're buying, you have to pay to buy those servers. That is a capex. That is a capital expenditure that you have to go for. Okay. The second expense is basically your OPEX, which is operational expense. That is, if you have, for example, 5,000 physical boxes or 10,000 physical boxes in your data center, you cannot expect 1, 2, 3 people to manage those 10,000 physical boxes. That is absolutely not possible. You need to have, a lot of people, and to manage your environment, because everyone, only one person cannot manage the environment. You need to have, a lot many people to manage your environment. Okay. So that is what an operational expenses. Now, this is basically the operational expense I'm referring to in terms of employees, the number of people you need to have. Okay. There are a few other things, also when it comes to operational expense, and which is your data center cost. Okay. So if I talk about your data center cost, so when you have 5,000 boxes, or when you have 6,000 boxes, for those 6,000 boxes, you need dedicated electricity. Okay. You need dedicated broadband connectivity. You need dedicated cooling for it. You need dedicated security for it. Okay. You need to make sure that these servers are 24/7 available. Okay. So these are the things, which are required. And then in every IT organization, there's something called as an audit. That how compliant are you in running your operations, which is basically an ITIL process. You need to make sure that you abide by the ITIL process as well. Okay. So all these things are required. And what you see over here, all this costs money. It's not that, in data center, when you have 6,000 physical boxes, you need so many racks, so much of electricity, internet connectivity, cooling, security. There's so much, which is required to maintain those 6,000 boxes. And then you would have your data center bill as well. Okay. I remember for a client, seeing a data center bill wherein we only had 7 racks, only 7 racks in a data center. And he used to pay a monthly bill of 25K. that was in USD. 25K every month we were paying just to host our data centers. Think about the money that we were paying only to keep our servers. It's, price of the server, operating system license, the warranty guarantee, the AMC of the hardware, that is all, additional expense. This is only the core expenses that I'm telling you. Okay. So these are the, couple of things that I've talked about. That is, you have a capex challenge, and then you have an operational challenge. The third challenge that you have is basically life cycle manager. That is, after 5 years. So for example, if you buy any server, okay, so let's say today is 2023, okay, you buy a server in 2023, and then if you want to use that same server in 2029, HP will say, or any other vendor will say, this server that you bought over here in 2023, in 2029, it will be end of life. The vendor will ask you to throw away the server and get a new one. Okay, so let me give you a practical example for it. So let's say you bought a server in 2015. Okay, so in 2015, you decided to buy a server and you bought a server. Okay, and then at that point of time, for example, you installed a Windows 2012 on it. Yeah. Now, speeding on, moving on, we are in 2023 now. Okay. Your company says that we need to upgrade the operating system. Okay. And the company says that now we need to install Windows Server 2022. All the servers will be upgraded from Windows 2012 to 2022. Now, what would happen is you will call up your vendor, you will tell them that, give me the firmwares, give me the drivers for this box because I need to install Windows 2022. Okay, and the server vendor will say, this server that you have, it does not support 2022 because this is end of life. You bought the server in 2015. It is no longer available now. So you need to throw the server, get a new one, and then install Windows 2022 on it because they're not going to support it. Okay. So if you have a very old branded machine, like for example, I bought a Dell laptop in 2008. When I got that laptop, I had Windows XP on it, and they gave me Windows Vista also. But in today's time, on that laptop, if I call up Dell and if I say I want to install Windows 11, or if I want to install Windows 10, you give me the drivers. They would say, sorry, I cannot provide you drivers for that old laptop that you have. You basically need to buy a new one. They will not be providing me the drivers. Even if I go to the Dell's website and if I put in the service tag number for my old desktop that I bought in 2008, I would not find Windows 10 drivers over there because that is not supported. That laptop that I have, I still might be using it, but that is end of life. I need to throw away that server. According to the vendor, they would say, you basically do away with that physical machine and buy a new one. Okay. Now, when you have to do away with your physical machine, you have to pay for it. So when you have this server, if I talk about the server that you bought in 2015, if you have to dispose it, if you have to do away with it, you have to give money. You will not be getting anything in back. Okay. Let me be very clear again. When you give an old hardware from your data center, you do not get any money back. You have to give money. Okay, because what would happen is you would reach out to a verified disposal vendor, and they would come at your facility. They will take your devices, they will dispose them, and you need to pay them money. They are not going to give you anything in return, that you are giving them physical boxes, so they hand over some money to you. That is not going to happen. You need to give them money. Okay. Now this is basically life cycle management. So when you have thousands and thousands of physical boxes every year, you would have at least 15, 20 machines which will be going out of support, which will be going end of life. You need to throw away those boxes and get a new one. Okay, this will be a very repetitive task, that you would have to perform. This is what basically a life cycle manager is. The next concern that you have basically running with a physical infrastructure, and the very critical piece, I should say, is basically utilization. Okay. When you buy a server, for example, I bought this server and I know that I would be using this server for development. Okay. Now, every application owner, has a wish of getting a lot of CPU and a lot of RAM. Okay. They want a lot of CPU and a lot of RAM because they know that once the CapEx is approved, to get the money again, for the upgrade of the server, it will be very challenging. So for example, if you get a server today with 32 GB RAM and then you go back to your boss and then you say that, I want to upgrade it from 32 to 64 GB RAM, you give me some more money. Okay, approve some more money to me and then I would get the RAM upgraded. It is a big hassle that you would be going through. It's in every organization, it's not that easy that the boss will say, okay, here you go, you can get the RAM upgraded. It's very challenging at times because you need to get approval, business justification, you raise a request for it, you order something will come back in, and then you get it installed and then you get it going. Okay, it takes time. So what people generally do is that when they're ordering server, they would, intentionally think of getting, like a RAM or a CPU on a higher side. Let's get something more. Let's get a lot of CPU and let's get a lot of RAM so that, later, down the road, I do not have to chase my manager, to make sure that, I need something more. Okay. Now, what I need to do is that when you get more RAM, when you get more CPU, what would happen is basically you might not be using everything. You might not be utilizing your entire CPU and your entire memory. Okay, let me show you a practical example. So I have got this desktop. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is my laptop that I have. Okay. And if I show you the performance over here, basically I am using only 36% or 40%, 26% of CPU utilization. My RAM is only 60%. Okay. My network card is basically nothing. I mean, I'm not using anything over here. Okay. Now, look at the hard drive utilization. It's basically active time is 0, 1%. It's nothing. It's not doing anything over here. Okay. Now, when you buy a server, you buy it with an intention that you're going to use it. Nobody buys a server keeping in mind that only 9% of CPU utilization is what I will be using. Or only, 20% or max 30% the utilization will go, and that is it. That is what my aim is. When I buy a server, nobody buys it with that aim that you will only be using the utilization, for example, 20, 30%. When you buy a server, you think about it that you're going to use it. You will be utilizing the physical resources which are there on the server. However, with a physical machine, when you buy it, basically on this physical machine, you will have a hard drive. Okay, you will have a hard drive. And on this hard drive, you would install either Windows or you would install Linux. Generally, you would go with a Windows or you would go with a Linux. Okay. Now, this is basically one operating system getting installed over here. Okay. It's only one operating system that is getting installed. So if my operating system is not using RAM, it's not using CPU, there is no way for me to share the CPU over here with a different box. This is something that I cannot do. I do not have this capability. Now, if I take you back to my laptop's example, my laptop is using currently only like 19% or 26% of CPU. I mean, it does not mean that, I can break my CPU into two and, take out the unutilized part and, put it in somewhere else. And when required, I can put it back in. I mean, this is something I cannot do. Whatever I have in my laptop, it will only be used by the operating system, which is Windows in this case, on my laptop. If I'm using good amount of CPU, great. If I'm not using, I cannot give it to anyone. I mean, it will be only there with me. I cannot, distribute. I cannot share those resources that I have. Okay. So with physical environment, these are the challenges that you have. Okay. You are stuck with the utilization. There is no way that you can grow it along. You have to pay a lot of money for it to get it. Even after getting it, you have to maintain it. You have to manage it. And then after 5 years, you have to basically throw away your boxes and get new ones again, which is a lot of headache, if you have to do this, because when you have to move the operating system, you do a backup, restore, making sure that everything is working okay, switching over IPs, racking it, stacking it. There are so many headaches that you have to go through. Yeah. This is what basically every company would go through if they are only running on physical machine. Okay, if you only have physical environment uh, and you are not using virtualization, then these are the issues that you are bound to run into. Okay, now how VMware is going to help you. Okay, so what would happen is when you have so many physical challenges, what we saw over here, so we have a term which is basically called a hypervisor. Okay. So a hypervisor is basically, think about it, when you have one physical server. Okay, so let's say I've got this one physical server. So what I will do is on this physical server, instead of installing Windows or Linux, what I would do is that I would install hypervisor over here. So just like on the hard drive, the way I installed Windows or Linux, over here on the server's hard drive, I would be installing hypervisor. Okay, like if I give you a laptop and if I ask you to install Windows 10 on it, okay, you would basically have a bootable USB of Windows 10. You will plug that bootable USB in a laptop and then you will install Windows 10. To install Windows 10, you do not need any other floppy, you do not need a third-party driver or something of that sort. You can install it directly on your laptop. Same is applicable with the hypervisor as well. It gets directly installed on the physical server. Okay. When you install hypervisor on the server directly, it gives you the capability to run multiple machines. So what would happen is now on that same box, you can run multiple virtual machines. So for example, you could have Windows 2012 over here. You could run Red Hat over here. You could run CentOS over here. You could run Ubuntu over here. You could run Windows 2016 over here, or you could run a Windows 10 over here. Okay. So now one box wherein earlier you were deploying Windows or Linux, one operating system, now you have so many operating systems that you can deploy on one physical box. Okay. And the best part is all these operating systems, they think that as if they are the only ones running on the hardware. They are fooled in thinking. So for example, Windows 12 over here is fooled in thinking that it is the only one which is running on this physical machine. Because end of the day, it is this hypervisor who is making sure that all the virtual machines get their own amount of CPU and RAM, and they are not conflicting with one another. Everyone gets their own piece of bread, and then they are happy living over there. Nobody's fighting with one another that, I need more CPU, I need more memory. You have a defined CPU memory, which is given to you. And the operating system that you have, which is, for example, Windows or Linux, they are absolutely unaware that are they running on a physical machine or are they running on a virtual machine. They are absolutely unaware about this. So this is what hypervisor can do for you. See, basically, official definition says that hypervisor is an application or an operating system, which can run multiple operating systems on one hardware. This is what basically a hypervisor can do for you. Now, if I talk about hypervisor, they are basically divided into two categories. So a hypervisor can be basically of a type 1 and it can be of a type 2. So type 1 hypervisor, if I have to say, would be an ISO file. Think about it like an ISO file. So the example that I gave you, that if you had to install Windows 10 on a laptop, okay? So what you would do is basically you will have the Windows 10 ISO, you will burn it on a USB, and then you would just plug that USB in the laptop, and then you would, initiate the installation. There is nothing extra that you need to do, okay? Because Windows 10 is a complete operating system. To install Windows 10, you do not need a third-party driver. You do not have to boot from floppy, or you do not have to do anything, anything different, to install Windows 10. Windows 10 has everything what an operating system needs. Okay. Same is applicable with the type 1 hypervisor. So when I talk about a type 1 hypervisor, it is a complete operating system. So you just need to burn that ISO file on a USB, plug that USB on the server and install it. Just like the way you would install a Windows 10 directly on the hard drive, same way the hypervisor will also get installed directly on the hardware. Type 2 hypervisor, think about it as an exe file. Okay, so for example, you have Windows 10 now. Okay, so I asked you to install Windows 10 on a laptop, you did that. Okay, now I say that I have a movie file and I want to watch a movie on Windows 10. So you would say that, maybe you can download VLC, or you have Windows Media Player, or you have, so many other applications are out there on which, you can play a movie. If you want to watch a movie, there are so many applications you can watch it on. So if you have to install VLC on your Windows 10, you basically need an operating system. VLC cannot get deployed if it does not have an operating system. Okay, VLC is an application. To install it, you need an operating system. Without an operating system, it's not going to work. Same is applicable with the type 2 hypervisor. It is an exe file and it needs an operating system. Okay. So how the architecture looks like is basically that you have a physical machine, and it could be Dell, Lenovo, IBM, any server it can be. And you have CPU, memory, RAM, hard drive and network over here. Now what you do is you install hypervisor directly on the physical machine. You install hypervisor directly over here, and then you create virtual machines over here. This is what you do. Okay. Now in a type 2 hypervisor, the architecture looks like that you have a physical machine. Here you would install Windows 10. Then you will install the type 2 hypervisor, which is basically an exe file. And then you would be creating virtual machines over here. Okay, this is the way it would look like. Now, type 2 hypervisor is good when you are learning. Okay, when you have to practice, when you're doing an R&D, when you want to explore the features of a product, then this type 2 hypervisor is fantastic for you. I mean, if you want to play around for personal learning, development, type 2 hypervisor is perfect. When you want to run your enterprise applications, when you want to run your production, then absolutely and always type 1 hypervisor. Okay. So type 1 hypervisor is basically always for your production. So when you want to run your production, you want to make sure that you have the best of performance, you have the best of everything for your application, then type 1 hypervisor would come in. This is the basic difference between their architectures, that how a type 1 looks like and basically how a type 2 looks like. Now let me talk about the VMware architecture. So in the earlier discussion, I told you about that physical machine cannot utilize their resources. There is a limitation that the resources cannot be utilized. Okay. Hey Mazim, go ahead. You have a question. You have raised your hand.
Yes, sir. I have one question. Is this operating system is free? Yeah, license based.
You have to get your own license for the operating system.
Okay. Thanks.
VMware is giving you the hypervisor its own technology, but the operating system license is something that you need to get. That is something that you would not be getting.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Now, moving on. So let me talk about the architecture, basically how VMware's architecture looks like and how it can help you. So let's take an example. I have a physical machine over here, okay? This is my physical machine, and it can be Dell, IBM, Fujitsu, whatever server that you can think of. Now, generally what would happen is on this physical machine, you go ahead and you deploy your hypervisor, okay? So you would be installing hypervisor directly on the hardware. Now, VMware's hypervisor is called ESXi. ESXi, okay? Now, basically it stands for Elastic Sky X, and I is for integrated, okay? So Elastic Sky X. God knows why did the name in such a way, but that is what it basically stands for. Okay. So you have a physical machine, and then on top of that physical machine, you install hypervisor directly on it. Okay. And now what you do is basically you go ahead and create virtual machines. So you could have VM1, you could have VM2, you could have VM3, and you could have VM4. Okay. So let's take an example that over here on this physical machine, I have 100 GB of RAM. Just an example, I have 100 GB of RAM over here. Okay. Now I create a virtual machine over here. This is my VM01. This is my VM02, 03, and 04. Now, what would happen is that every virtual machine needs to be given some CPU, it needs to be given some hard drive, some network cards, and some RAM. Okay. All these components, they are basically virtual components. So we say virtual CPU, virtual hard drive, virtual network card, and virtual RAM because it is going on a virtual machine. And the resources that we have over here, RAM, CPU, network, and hard drive, they are basically called physical resources. So you have got physical RAM, physical hard drive, physical CPU. So in a nutshell, you can say vCPU over here, and you can say pCPU over here. So vCPU is basically virtual CPU, that you are aligning to a virtual machine, and pCPU is what you have on your physical server. Okay. Now, okay. All right. So what would happen is that you have a physical machine. Okay. And on that physical machine, basically what we are doing is that we are installing hypervisor directly over here. Okay. And then what we do is that we go ahead and we create virtual machines over here. Okay. This is what we saw in the last diagram that, when we were creating it. Now, in the last diagram, I basically told you that, there might be a situation where your virtual machines might not be using the entire amount of CPU, memory, and RAM. Okay. But let's say that you are using entire CPU, memory, and RAM. Okay. So for example, this is your 100 GB RAM that you have on your physical machine. This is your hypervisor that you have. Okay. Now you created over here VM01. This is 02, this is 03, and this is 04. Okay. Now, what would happen is that, you would give, for example, 25 GB RAM over here, 25 GB RAM over here, 25 GB RAM over here, and 25 GB RAM over here. Okay. Now, let's take a hypothetical situation that all the virtual machines are basically using 100% of their resources. So whatever has been allocated to them, they are using that complete amount. Okay. Now the question comes that can you create a fifth virtual machine, a sixth virtual machine, a seventh virtual machine, an eighth virtual machine, or a ninth virtual machine? Can you do that? The question is yes, you can still go ahead and create it. But the question is, should you be creating it? Okay. That's a big no-no. You should not be doing it. Okay. VMware would not stop you from creating virtual machines. You can absolutely do that. But should you be doing it? You should not. Now, what would happen if you create a virtual machine? So for example, you create this virtual machine over here and you give 25 GB of RAM and you power on this machine. Now, what would happen is the operating system over here, be it Windows or Linux, it does not know that, it is running on a VMware environment. And basically, that VMware environment basically does not have CPU and memory resources. This is something that this virtual machine would absolutely not know about. Okay. So what would happen is that now this virtual machine needs RAM, and hypervisor does not have RAM because it had 100 GB. It has only 100 GB of RAM, and this 100 GB of RAM has been allocated to all the virtual machines, and basically they are using that entire amount of resources as well. Okay. So hypervisor does not have, physical resources to give it to this virtual machine. So what would happen is basically you would have a performance issue, and which will be across all the virtual machines. So you would basically run into now performance issues. You can create a virtual machine, you can power on the virtual machine, but again, virtual machine would not be able to get the resources. So what would happen is that the virtual machine will start running into the performance issue, and every virtual machine is basically, would have concerns in getting the, the required amount of CPU and RAM. Okay. This is what would happen. But again, you can create the virtual machines. When you are creating a virtual machine, so, a lot of times, you have this basic question that, for example, I have a monster server. When I say monster server, I'm basically referring to the resources. For example, you have 2000 GB of RAM. Okay. You have two CPUs, CPU 1, you have CPU 2. They both are of, for example, 40 cores, something. Okay. So you have 80 cores on the server, physical cores on the server. You have 2000 GB of RAM. Another question is how many virtual machines you can create. Okay. The question comes now, how many virtual machines you can create? Basically, you can create as many virtual machines as you want. But a good recommendation is that whatever the physical resources that you have, whatever the physical resources that you have at the bottom, make sure that you only use 80%. Okay, so for example, over here you have 2000 GB of RAM. So you can use RAM up till 1600 GB. So when you see utilization going or reaching up till 1600 GB of RAM, till that time, you can create your virtual machine. So for example, if your RAM utilization is 1200 GB, you are absolutely in a good state to create more virtual machines, and you should create more virtual machines over here. Okay. However, when your physical RAM utilization reaches 1600 GB, then I would say you should take a precaution, tell your manager, tell your client, tell them about it that, your server is maximum, it's maximing out in terms of RAM. You need more RAM, or either you need to get a new server. Okay. This is something that you should tell them. Okay, but 80% is something, which was allowed you could have on the servers in terms of utilization. Okay. Now, let me quickly show you on how basically an installation would happen. So if I talk about an ESXi installation, let me quickly show you that, how the installation would happen. And then I would show you about the most important aspect is about the jobs. I mean, how do I, or what would be the prospect of doing this course and how this is going to help me, how much it can fetch me in terms of CTC. I'm going to talk about that. Okay. So first, let me show you in terms of how the installation would happen. Okay. So for installation, what I've done is that, let me show you my environment over here. So I have this physical machine with me. Okay. On this physical machine, I've installed ESXi directly. Okay, so this is my home IP that I have, 172.16.10.100. Now, this is a made machine that I have. A made machine means it's not a Dell machine. It's not a branded machine. I got the components together and I assembled it up. Okay. Now, on this machine, I have got my own RAM. I've got my own hard drive and CPU. Whatever I have. Okay. And this is basically I've installed an ESXi on it. Okay. Now, if you have to deploy an ESXi, let me show you that how you would be installing ESXi. Okay. So within an ESXi, I can create one more virtual machine, and in that virtual machine, I can install ESXi as well. Okay. So what I'm basically doing is that you have a physical machine. Okay. And on that physical machine, what I have done is that I've installed a hypervisor, which is basically ESXi. I've installed a hypervisor, which is basically ESXi. Now what I would be doing is I would be creating a virtual machine over here. I would be creating a VM01 virtual machine. And this virtual machine as an operating system, I should be installing Windows or Linux. But just to show you the installation, I am installing over here ESXi. So within the virtual machine, I'm installing another ESXi. Okay. So this is basically called a nested virtualization. Nested virtualization means that within an ESXi, you're deploying again an ESXi. This is called a nested virtualization, and this is supported only in the home labs. This is not supported in production. VMware would never tell you that, to do this in a production environment. This is only when you're trying to learn something, when you only have one physical box like I have, and you want more ESXi so that, you can do all the practicals and demos. Then this is one of the ways, you can create more virtual machines, more ESXis, and then, you can work on them. Okay. So basically to show you on basically how an ESXi installation would happen, okay, what I'll be doing is I'm going to create a new virtual machine. So I will say that I need to create a new virtual machine. Or basically, let me do it from here. So there is a management component which is called a vCenter. And when you install basically the vCenter, this is how your environment looks like. Okay. And then from here, you manage your environment and you have the complete capability of how you want to manage it. And this is your ESXi, and this is the way everything looks like. This is the way you manage your environment. Now, let me quickly show you on how you basically create a new virtual machine. So what I'll be doing is I already have few virtual ESXi's that I use for my lab, and let me show you on how to create one. So I'll come over here and I'll say new virtual machine. I'll give it a name. For example, I would say test ESXi 01. Okay, I'll hit next. Where do I want to place it? I want to place it on this physical machine. In which data store I want to keep it. I mean, this is something that we would be learning later in the course, that what these concepts are. And over here, I'll choose over here ESXi 7. Now I have options that I can choose ESXi 8, or I can choose ESXi 7. I can choose ESXi 8 also over here. And then I'll define that, how much CPU, how much RAM do I want to give to this virtual machine. Now, this depends on how much you have on your physical environment. The number of resources that you have on your physical machine, same can be allocated over here. Now, I will choose an ISO over here. I already have an ISO. Let me quickly navigate. And let me choose the ISO. Okay. So I did select my ISO over here. I'll put it to connect. I'll say next. Let me hit back. Sorry. Cancel. Expose. Next. Finish. Now what I would do is basically I would power on this virtual machine. I do not use hands-on lab. Basically in hands-on lab, Arshad, to answer your question, what would happen is you do not get an option of installation. You cannot install anything over there. You only have few basic things, that you can play around with it. You cannot break anything. You cannot, try out things a lot of way that you would like to. I completely agree that in case if you are short of physical resources, hands-on lab is a good option to go about and seeing things over there. But if you have a physical machine to play around with, nothing can beat that. Okay. I do agree with you that, hands-on lab is an option, but I think, to see the physical installation, to make changes, to make the configurations as you feel like, and to probably, get more understanding of a product, I think a physical environment or a lab would definitely help you. Till the time you do not have it, then yes, hands-on lab is a good option to go about it.
Can I get the links for that hands-on lab?
Sure, just go to Google and type VMware hands-on lab. Okay, nothing major, just come to VMware hands-on lab, hit the enter key. You would get this link and you have all VMware configured hands-on lab over here. Yeah.
So
but
it
again,
is already pre-configured, right?
Correct, pre-configured. You cannot install anything over it. You cannot do anything.
We
It is
can't
basically
use for our lab
Is it
purpose,
for
like
testing
that.
purpose or else for learning purpose that VMware?
So here what would happen is that you would see the component, like I've installed a vCenter over here. So this is the way you would see it in a hands-on lab, that you already have a vCenter. You would not be able to install a vCenter. You would not know what the components are. Or if I shut down the vCenter, what would happen? If I restart the vCenter, what would happen? All those options would not be there for you. I mean, you can
But
just
we
see the
can install
functionality.
the OS, right? We can install the ESXi, right, in the hands-on lab.
No, you would not be able to install an ESXi. That's not possible.
Okay.
It is a predefined setup that you have. Don't expect hands-on lab something to be very something which gives you let you do anything. No, it's a very defined setup what you get, and you can just play around with that. Nothing major, nothing fancy.
So web is there something like by using Hyper-V, right, sir? Windows mission.
No. So what would happen is when you install an ESXi, basically to access the ESXi, you manage it from a browser. You can have a browser on Linux, Windows, Mac, any operating system on earth, would not make any difference.
Okay. By using Hyper-V, we can create Windows mission and Linux mission, any mission, right? but we
Same
can
is
access
applicable over here as well. So when you create a virtual machine can be accessed over the network. So every virtual machine will get an IP, right?
Okay, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
you get that access, and then you can start using it.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. It will goes to remote desktop.
Correct. Remote desktop, SSH, whatever you want, you can do that. You do not have to go via VMware to access that machine. It can
Okay.
be all done over the network also.
Okay, sir.
So,
Is there any
sorry.
freeware licenses, Vaibhav, where we can set up our own lab and test it, like trial
VMware,
version or something?
right? VMware, every software that you buy, that you deploy, for example, ESXi. So you see over here, it shows me that you have expired or expiring licenses because I'm using a trial version. It comes by default with 60 days. VMware lets you use the applications for 60 days.
Okay,
So that's fine. You can use it for 60 days. No concerns. And then you can reinstall it again.
So for 60 days, this trial version, we will be having a full control and we will be able to create
Yes.
all these components?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Got it. Thank you.
Sorry for interrupting you. Actually, one thing I want to know. Actually, we have one of hardware like Dell or something. We can say Cisco or Dell, any hardware. So there is already running operating system like Linux. So how we can install the ESXi over there?
So what would happen is when you buy an Dell server, the Dell representative would ask you what is the use of that server or which operating system are you going to use it. So when you say that you would be installing ESXi on it, you get two options. Either Dell will install the ESXi for you and then ship it to you, or they would absolutely send you a blank server with no operating system on it, and you install it on your own. So if you tell them that you would be using it for ESXi, they would not install Linux or Windows on it.
No, actually, my question is different because of in the live environment, ESXi host running over the Linux. So hardware version is Dell and over there Linux, then running ESXi host. So how
Then
we can install that?
You would have to install, you would have to probably use VMware Workstation. So on Linux, you need to download a type 2 hypervisor, as I told earlier, that you need to have a type 2 hypervisor for Linux, and then you can create virtual machines over there.
Yeah, I know that actually, because I have live environment actually. So there I can see the Photon Linux, actually. So there is running Photon Linux, then over there running a ESXi host. So what is the method and how we can create and install that? Because I am working in this live environment, like we have this company from USA. So actually, what is the method that are using? So I don't know. So that's why I'm asking you actually.
Okay, there are 2-3 components involved over here. Let me answer all the components one at a time. First, you mentioned about Photon OS. Okay. Now let me tell you what Photon OS is. It is a Linux distribution which was managed, controlled, and upgraded by VMware. Like you have Kali, Unix, Ubuntu, Fedora, all these distributions. Photon OS is basically created by VMware and managed by VMware. Okay, so when you talk about the VMware appliances, so you talk about vRealize, you talk about vCSA, you talk about all these components that VMware builds for you. They are built on top of Photon OS. That is what a Photon OS is. Okay. Now, if you have a physical box, on this physical box, you mentioned that you're running Linux. Is this true?
Right.
This is what. Okay. Now, if you want to run ESXi over here, if you want to run an ESXi, a dummy ESXi, basically on this Linux, you need to install VMware Workstation. And then within VMware Workstation, you would have the ability to create a new ESXi for testing purposes. But again, if it's your production Linux, then I would say you should not be doing it.
Okay, I understand.
And to get VMware Workstation, you just need to go to Google and just type over here VMware Workstation, and then you would be able to download it over here. This is probably, you can just go over here, download the Linux version for it, and then you will be good to go. Okay. All right. So now we
Thank
come
you.
to the installation, no problem. So now we come to the installation part of things and how the installation would happen of ESXi. So when we talk about an ESXi installation, when you boot from the ISO, so as I mentioned that ESXi is a type 1 hypervisor and it is a complete operating system. You do not need anything else. Hey, Gaurav. Go ahead, Gaurav.
Hello.
Gaurav, you with me, buddy? Okay, no problem. Whenever you are back, maybe if you're hearing me or if not. Okay, so what would happen is that, when we talk about an ESXi installation, ESXi is a complete operating system which is directly getting installed on the hardware. Okay, so if you do an installation of ESXi on a virtual machine, or if you do it on a physical machine, these are the screens that you're going to see. Okay, installing an operating system on a virtual machine does not mean that you would see something different or you would see something completely out of the box when it comes to the installation. Installation, everything remains the same. VMware is not changing anything or is not modifying the operating system for you in any way. Okay, you get the complete operating system. So when you begin with the ESXi installation, you see the first screen over here. The first screen basically says, welcome to the installation. And then here it says VMware ESXi 8 installs on most systems, but systems on VMware compatibility guide are supported. And it gives you a link for this compatibility guide. Now, this is very important to understand that what the first screen means over here. This basically means that if you want to install ESXi, you can do it on any laptop, any desktop, any server in the world. If you try installing ESXi, there are high chances that the installation would go through and you would not run into issues. But the concern is that tomorrow, if you have any concerns, anything not working well on that ESXi, and when you go to the technical support VMware engineering team, and then you tell them that, hey, I'm using your product, I have some concerns and I need your help, then you will not be given support because you're not running on a certified hardware. This is what the first screen basically says. So the first screen says that you agree, you understand that you are installing ESXi on a certified hardware. Now, how do I verify that my hardware is certified? So what you have to do is basically go to Google and just type VMware compatibility guide. You would see the first link over here, VMware compatibility guide. You click on that link. You choose ESXi 8. For example, you have an HP server. You choose HP over here. Here you need to choose systems and servers. You choose ESXi 8, you choose the HP server, and for example, your HP model number is 380, just as an example. Okay. So these are all the HP servers with a model number of 380 on which ESXi 8 can be installed. Okay, so you have all the vendors over here. So Cisco, IBM, all the vendors out there in the world, you would have, vendor over here. So it is paramount that you understand that your hardware on which you're trying to install ESXi should be listed over here. If your hardware is not listed over here, then it means that your hardware is not supported. You should talk to VMware, you should talk to vendor before installing the ESXi, because if you run into issues, you call a VMware technical support. As soon as they get to know that you're running on a non-supported hardware, they would not give you support. They will close your case. So this is what the first screen basically says over here, that you understand, you agree that you're running ESXi on a supported hardware. Okay, this is what basically the first screen says. So I understand and I say, okay, continue. I agree that, my hardware is basically running on a certified hardware. Then I've got license agreement. You have to agree to it. There is no option that you can disagree to it. And then basically it would show you that where do you want to install the ESXi. So I see my 10 GB hard drive. I say that's where I want to install it. What is your keyboard layout? I'd say it's US default. And now it is basically asking for a root password. Why root? Because ESXi is a Linux kernel background. ESXi is based on Linux. Okay, so you have to specify a password. So for example, I'll say welcome at 123, W in caps. So it says password matches. I hit the enter key, and now it says that you are about to install ESXi. Whatever you have on the hard drive will go away. It will be all repartitioned and you will get ESXi. Are you sure you want to do this? I say yes, F11, and the installation continues. Now, this is the way you install ESXi, whether you are trying to install it on a physical machine or a virtual machine or any machine on the world, you know, this is the way the installation would happen for ESXi. Okay. Now, when the installation is done, you access the ESXi via IP, and then you start managing it. This is the way the console will come up, and these are all the options. Okay. So this is how basically an ESXi installation happens. Okay. Now, let me come to the last part of the today's session, is about why you should be learning the technology. Okay. We have spoken about that, you know, what technology is, how it can help you, what the benefits are. But the real important question is that why you should be using it and how it can help you. Okay. So let me show you some real world examples, and it would help you a lot. I'm just going to pause my screen sharing for a moment, and let me share something.
हेलो सर।
Hey.
ओ सर, बात ऐसी थी, NSXT हम किस लिए यूज करते हैं?
वो बेसिकली यूज होता है सॉफ्टवेयर डिफाइंड नेटवर्किंग के लिए। तो होता क्या है, जो अब नेटवर्किंग होती है, जो बेसिकली कंट्रोल आपके पहले राउटर और स्विचेस के पास होता था, और वो बेसिकली सारा कंट्रोल सॉफ्टवेयर के पास आ गया है कि IPsec पिन बनाना है, राउटिंग करनी है, डिफॉल्ट गेटवे बनाना है, फायरवॉल लगाना है, लोड बैलेंसर लगाना है। वो सारा काम जो है, जो पहले एक फिजिकल मशीन, फिजिकल राउटर स्विचेस के पास होता था, अब वो सारा काम मैं कंट्रोल कर सकता हूँ सॉफ्टवेयर से। उसे कहते हैं NSX, विच इज माई सॉफ्टवेयर डिफाइंड नेटवर्किंग।
तो सर, वो अभी जो आपने वर्चुअली किया सब GUI बेस पे, तो वो पूरा कमांड बेस पे रहता है, लाइक लिनक्स?
यस।
ओके सर, ओके। मतलब मेरा, सॉरी बट VMware और ESXi का मेरा लाइव में है हमारा एनवायरनमेंट डेटा सेंटर में। बस NSXT का थोड़ा और गाइडेंस चाहिए था।
हाँ, मैं आपकी बात समझता हूँ। तो NSX इज अ कम्प्लीटली डिफरेंट प्रोडक्ट ऑल टुगेदर। वो बहुत ही एक अलग प्रोडक्ट होता है ऑल टुगेदर, राइट? तो ओके, नो प्रॉब्लम। Please allow me 1 minute while I quickly show you on exactly how it works.
Sir, I have one question. Can I ask now?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, what is learns in VMware actually?
Basically, it's a raw hard drive.
Okay, so
Okay.
a physical hard drive.
Correct. It's a raw hard drive that you have, and that is what basically it is.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Vaibhav, I have a question actually.
Go ahead,
so let's say I am using hyperthreading for my CPU, okay? So how come this hypervisor enables that or finds out that I am using hyperthreading?
So what would happen is, when we talk about hyperthreading, your application should be intelligent enough to take the advantage of Intel hyperthreading. So your application needs to be designed in such a way that it understands hyperthreading, wherein one physical core is logically divided into 2 threads. Now, ESXi as an operating system is intelligent enough to understand that if you are enabled, or if you have enabled hyperthreading or not. If it has, then it will take advantage of it. In a nutshell, if you have hyperthreading on your environment, you should definitely enable it. Okay.
Okay, now, so let's say I'm just deploying OS on top of XI. It already knows that
I'm sorry, your voice was breaking, but if I could understand you, yeah, if you have hyperthreading enabled on it, then what would happen is that every virtual machine, every vCPU that has to be aligned or that has to be placed, it will work well. ESXi would actually make sure that it goes well. This is what basically it will do. Okay. Now, you are seeing, a LinkedIn window. Okay. Now let me show you over here, basically when it comes to VMware, how it would help you. So all that you have to do is that, you need to come over here and just type, for example, hiring VMware. Okay, and if you go to posts over here, and then maybe you say you post from last month, and you say show results over here. So you see this guy? This guy is basically saying that they're hiring for technical support engineers. So if you click on this photograph, now he's going to show you that, you know, they are basically hiring technical support engineers who need to know about VMware technology, who can assist the customers. So if you have, you know, some basic understanding of VMware on how, you know, how it works or how it can help you, you would have a very good chance, you know, getting in, you know. Then you have, you know, folks like these, you know, wherein you can add them and they can probably, you know, keep posting over here, and you can reach out to them and you can tell them that, you know, you already know about VMware, you have worked on it, and you would like to apply for the opportunity. They have different roles as technical support engineer 1, 2, 3. You can apply for those. Okay. The other option is look over here. You know, there are so many people who are applying for Rackspace, for example. This is one of the opportunities wherein they say you need to know about ESXi. You know, very basic, you know, what they're asking for is basically requires, you know, 2 years or 3 years in system engineering. You need to know it's a basic level 1 opportunity that you have. Now, I'm very sure that, you know, if you know, all the opportunities that you see over here, I would not know, you know, what the pay package that they are offering, but I'm very sure that, you know, it should be around 7, 8, nothing less than that. I mean, in today's world, you know, if you look at it, Wipro is giving freshers around 7 lakhs. Then, you know, if you talk about something about like a VMware engineer, this I am very hopeful should be about 10 plus. It should not be nothing less than 10 plus. Okay, in terms of CTC.
Sorry for interrupting you. Actually, we are not providing any hike. Actually, I have already worked with that company, so
Okay.
not paid very much.
But I think, you know, I understand that, you know, from your point of view, but there are so many people out there who might be interested, you know, in looking for a change. And VMware as an option can definitely help them. You know, like you have whatever,
Yeah,
you know,
definitely
whenever
we
you
can
do a
say
switchover,
VMware is, yeah.
I just wanted to say that, you know, whenever you're trying to go for a switchover, at least the company would give you, say, about, you know, 30% hike. You know, what do you have in your current CTC? So if you are good, and maybe, you know, if you give a good interview, you might have an option of asking 35% or maybe 40%. If you're willing to relocate, I don't know where you guys are, but if you're willing to relocate to a specific location, that amount be on the higher side. My point is this technology is still relevant and can still give you some money. You know, it's not that if you learn this technology, there are no options available. You know, on LinkedIn, you would find so many options out there wherein people are absolutely looking to hire people. And, you know, you might have opportunities because here what you're seeing is from worldwide. I mean, you would see from all parts of the world. It's not only specific to India. So here you would have a lot of options over here. You just need to go through and understand. But the base is that, you know, you need to understand the core VMware virtualization. When you understand the core VMware virtualization, you know, all these people that you see over here, they are already working in somewhere. You know, you can also reach out to them and ask them that, you know, if they have any opportunities. You see that, you know, they're hiring for, you see an option for TCS over here. Everyone, you know, knows what TCS is, and they can also, you know, pay you at least 30% or, you know, 35% on what your current CTC is. I don't want to go into the, you know, nitty-gritties of a company. I don't want to talk about any politics over here, but, you know, yes, I mean, every company would offer you something or the other, you know, when it comes to an option. So yes, I mean, the reason I'm showing you this is to just to show you that, you know, VMware is very much relevant when it comes to technology, and it can help you a lot. Okay,
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I
posts
agree.
available.
Vaibhav, can I ask you to summarize what we have learned today? And I also want you to, you know, just tell me briefly how to install ELXi on a trial version when if I am creating a VMware trial version account.
So what we did today was we talked about the introduction of VMware, on how VMware can help you, what the options are, and basically in terms of architecture and how the installation would happen. Now, when you install ESXi, it automatically comes with a 60 days of trial license. You do not have to, you know, enter any key, or you do not have to do anything out of the box to get you into the evaluation version. It by default runs in an evaluation version for 60 days. So you just need to get the ISO of ESXi, install it on a physical machine if you have, or if you have VMware Workstation, you can install over there. And then, you would have, the access to the application, and then you can start using it.
Sure. I also wanted to consult with you so this is a first class, right?
This is basically a demo. It's not a first class. I would not say this is a first class. This is basically a demo.
How
due
long
to the...
this? Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah. So it will take close to about 6 weekends.
6 weekends. Okay.
6 weekends, 3 hours on a Saturday.
Basically, want to know about
Sunday.
next session.
So what would happen is, sure, let me tell you about what would what I would be teaching. Okay, let me quickly answer that question for you.
Hello.
Yeah, Web, actually, why I wanted to know this is for how long this will be running. My younger brother has just passed out from the college and he has just completed BC. So I want him to attend all these classes. And I think you are from one of some institute, right? So just wanted to get in touch with you. So for more detail or something for learning purpose.
Absolutely.
So definitely I'll contact you. Actually, I'm working for Standard Chartered Bank as a senior technical manager and managing operations. So if I can talk to you, definitely I'll contact you. From the group, I'll take your number.
Sure, absolutely. So I have, I would be sharing Amit's number over here. I'm not sure if Amit is there on the call. If not, let me quickly write down his number over here on the screen over here. So if you have any queries, anything related to it, I would say Amit is the guy to reach out to him. And let me quickly write down his number over here before I forget.
Sure.
His number is 954066286. Yep. So I would say that if you have any questions, then please feel free to reach out to Amit. This number is also available on WhatsApp, and you can have all your questions answered over here.
Okay. Thanks.
If there's no problem. If you have any technical question, anything specific technically you want to understand, then Amit might not be the right guy. Then maybe he can redirect you to me, and then I can probably answer that question for you if it's anything technical. If it's anything non-technical, then Amit is the guy to probably answer that question. What basically I was doing is I was showing you over here that this is what I will be teaching. So this is basically for version 7, but for version 8 is basically the same. So I would be teaching you the complete official curriculum. So what VMware says on their official website, on their official training, I will be teaching you everything, which basically, starts off with an introduction, then what a virtual machine is, how you create, what the options are, how do you identify what a vCenter is, how do you configure and manage networks, how do you configure storage, what is a virtual machine management, which is basically vMotion, cloning, and all that. Then there's a resource management, which talks about on how you optimize the CPU memory, what are the rules, what is basically an overcommitment, how do you see that, what a cluster is, what basically lifecycle management is, that is how do you upgrade your environment, how you patch it, how you go to the next version. So this is all that I would be covering in my batch, and I would be talking about things which are not mentioned over here as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, is this charge anything for this course?
Sorry?
Do you charge anything for these videos?
Yeah, so this class that we would be having, it's a paid class. The demo is for free today that we are doing, but there is a cost associated. So I would not be the right person to answer on commercials. I think you need to get in touch with Amit. This is the number, and he would be able to give you all the details. If there are any discounts or anything promotional schemes that he's running, he's the one who manages everything, so he would be able to answer that question for you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Piper.
No problem. So I would be covering whatever is mentioned in the official curriculum. I would be showing you every practical over here. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Sorry for interrupt. So
no problem.
some people they will tell like storage testing. It will come like under this only, right, sir?
So storage is a very vast topic. Okay. So when we talk about storage, There's so many things which can be done in storage. What I would be talking about storage is on how you manage it when it comes to VMware, when it comes to ESXi. How do you manage that storage? What are the options that you can go ahead with, what you can do? So everything we will be talking about. So I would be starting from scratch in our course. I think that everyone in my course who are attending is basically I take it as an inbuilt thing in me that is I start from scratch, thinking that I have to tell you each and every term or what it means, what it is there, any jargon that you don't understand, I would be talking about it. So basically I'll be starting from ABCD of virtualization and taking you to XYZ.
Okay. Actually, he was working as a storage, sir. Backup, data backup and recovery, those things. He was a testing engineer. That's why you told storage. That's why I asked you, sir. It will cover that also, or
no, that would not be covered. So if he's a storage admin, with a storage admin or with a backup admin, the kind of responsibilities that you have is very different. Okay. Over here, I would be focusing on to make you a VMware admin. So my intention is to make you a VMware admin on how you can do that and what you would be learning, how you basically navigate and understand this console. So my intention is that you should know everything in this console over here. So when you come to an ESXi, and when you choose an ESXi over here, basically you should know what these options are. How do you configure a networking? What the options are, how you do everything. So this is what my intention is, to make you a VMware admin. And once you become a VMware admin, as we see over here, there are a lot of options which are available out there in the market wherein people are looking to hire VMware admins. So there's so many options available. So when you know about it, when you're not going absolutely blank, I would also help you with your resume as well, that wherein I would show you that, what are the points, you can mention it after the training, that what you know, and these things you can mention over here. So for example, if I talk about a data center migration, yes, I will talk about, on how a data center migration can be done. What are the options? So you can probably give a background to it and you can talk about it. Yes, I know about it. So there are many things, that you can do over here. So yeah, VMware as a technology, like I said, if you keep scrolling down, this page is not going to end very soon, but you would see a lot of options over here. So you would have people coming in and talking about and basically asking for VMware admins. So yeah, you can definitely go for it. This is a good technology.
Yeah. Thanks, Vaibhav. Next session will be on a enrollment basis, or how it is?
Enrollment basis.
Okay. Okay, sure. I'll talk to Amit and then we'll just have a
call. No problem.
Thank you so much.
I had a
I'll take an
question.
exit.
I had a question. Is there any prerequisite to join this course?
No, I would not say there's any prerequisite. I think I would say a basic understanding of what an operating system is, a very basic understanding of what networking is. I mean, if you know these things, I think you are good enough to join this course. I'm not expecting anything out of the box that you have to be some expert to join this course. No, that's not that. Just a basic understanding of IT on how it works.
Yeah. Vaibhav, one more question. Enough. How different it is from the AWS?
So what would happen is, if I talk about AWS is basically a cloud wherein you do not have control about things, and basically you provision the resources what you want and then you probably do away with it. Okay. Now, AWS and all the other cloud vendors are out there. That is fine, fair enough. However, VMware still has, and there are so many still customers out there who are not going to cloud tomorrow. When we talk about cloud, you would have heard about it, or maybe, if you Google it up, you would also get to know cloud is a journey wherein you take one step at a time. And it takes a lot of time for an organization, to go to cloud. For example, if I talk about SBI, State Bank of India, they run on VMware ESXi. They are a very big customer for VMware ESXi. Now, SBI cannot move everything into AWS. I mean, they might do it, I don't know, but it will be very hard for SBI to outsource everything and keep everything on AWS and have no control, at their end. Correct, so many customers would not do that and would not be comfortable doing it. VMware, customers have actually invested a lot in VMware, And VMware has also, gone ahead and they have partnered with cloud vendors. So now you can run VMware on AWS, you can run VMware on Google, you can run VMware on Azure, on Alibaba, on Oracle, on IBM. So VMware is now supported basically on all the other cloud providers as well. So what people do is they take their VMware footprint from on-premises to AWS, but they are still in VMware. So if you just Google up and just type VMware Cloud on AWS. Okay, and if you hit the enter key over here, so you would see that there is an option of how you can run VMware workloads still running on VMware in AWS. Okay, so there are a lot of options available, when it comes to VMware. So VMware is not going away. VMware is not going to die as a company, because if you look at the profit margins, every year their profit is increasing. Now you have to really, help me understand that if a profit for a company is increasing every year, how can a company die? How can such a company die? I mean, those companies cannot die, in at a blink of an eye or something. The VMware as a technology company is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Cloud is a different form of managing your environment. VMware is a different form of managing your environment, and everyone has customers, that they have to look into.
Correct.
Hi,
So,
sir. I have one question.
Yeah, please.
Actually, this is not it coding, right? This is
No,
it
this is
coding
not
or
coding. No, this is not
yeah.
coding. This is basically a UI management. So you see this UI. From this UI, you need to manage your environment. So how do you do this? What this option is, what this means over here, what this advanced setting means, what this licensing means, what this means over here. So you have to basically know about all these things over here.
Okay, everything
so
is like a written thing.
UI. Everything is a UI.
Okay.
There is no
Is
command
no
line over here.
Hello,
No
sir.
coding, zero coding.
I have one more question. Suppose I have installed ESXi host on physical machine. It is necessary to connect that machine to another machine, or we
So
can
basically
connect.
what would happen is if you are installing ESXi on a physical machine, you have two options. Either you can keep it isolated. So you have a standalone machine not connected to the network. Okay. If you want that this machine should be able to talk to Google, should be able to talk to Resolve Internet, then you need to give internet connectivity, and yes, it needs to go out. Okay. So it
Sir, one
depends.
more
If you want to
question.
keep it isolated, then you do not need network connectivity. If you need it to be connected, then of course you need to give network connectivity. It depends on you on how you want to manage your environment.
Sir, one more question.
Go ahead.
Sir, is it required any skills to learn?
As I mentioned, basic IT. If you have knowledge about basic operating system, if you have knowledge about basic networking, that should be more than enough. Very basic I'm looking at.
Yeah, I don't have anything, sir. Prior to this, can I learn any other course to start this course?
No, I think basic IT should be more than enough. Bomesh, to answer your question, now would not be the right time. We can talk about it in the course, but not right now.
Vaibhav, I have one more question. So how we can apply the jobs in LinkedIn, like VMware?
So it's very simple. What you have to do is basically, so yeah, you see over here, this guy is basically saying that VMware is striving. Okay. So you would have to, so it says you can refer over here. So you can go to this link, and you can apply from here. If you scroll down, you would see that, there are many, people over here. So you see over here, they're basically hiring for Horizon. This might not be the right one for you, but if you scroll down, you would see many options over here.
Fine.
So you just need to talk to the people, like this lady over here. She's mentioning about, an opportunity. So if you are from Windows background and if you know VMware, then you can reach out to the lady over here, and then maybe, you can drop her an email. So she has mentioned her email address as well. So yeah, this looks like a valid and a genuine job opportunity. You can reach out to Shilpa over here, and then, yes, you can let her know that, you saw an opportunity, a post of hers on LinkedIn, and you would like to apply. And, if your resume is relevant for her, she should definitely get back to you. So this is the way you would go about applying it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vaibhav.
No problem.
Yeah, Vaibhav, one more question. If I complete this course, can I get a certificate, or I can just apply for the VMware certification?
So very good question that you've asked over here. So basically what happens is when I talk about VMware certification, so if I talk about Microsoft certification, so to go for a Microsoft certification, you basically enroll for the exam and you give the paper. You do not have to take a mandatory training. Okay, training is not necessary. It's not absolutely mandatory, when it comes to Microsoft. Same is applicable with CCNA as well. Okay. However, with VMware, training is absolutely mandatory. If you want to give their official certification, which is VCP, then you need to take a training. And the training will cost you close to about 70 or 50K. Nothing less
from
than
VMware.
50K. Yes, you need to take the training from VMware. It will cost you about 50,000 INR, and then you can get the training. Now, not everyone can spend 50K. I did not spend 50K from my pocket. So what would happen is generally when you join a company will pay this amount for you on your behalf. Okay. So you do not have to pay anything. The company will, send you to the certification training, and then they would, get you certified. So that is fine. You do not have to pay this amount. Okay. Right now, after doing this training, you would not be able to become a VCP because this is not an official training. Here, we are only imparting the knowledge. Here, we are not registered, authorized institute from VMware. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, when we are having any partner portal, no, so we can get the certification freely, or we have to charge for that?
No, there'll be a charge for it because from a partner portal you can only get sales certificates like VMware's sales professional, VMware sales technical professional. These certificates you can get from VMware partner portal.
Okay, only
but you cannot.
sales
But you cannot get
technical.
Yes, but you
The
cannot
sales
get a
technical one
VCP.
we can redeem, no, easily.
This is something that you can do for free if you have a partner portal.
Yeah, we are having the partner portal, so
yes,
I
so
log in.
these you can do for free, but VCP
Sir,
you would
I am
not be
just
able to do. You would have to pay
resigning
for
the
it.
company in 2 days. I am going for different company. If I have made any portal login in 2 days only, after that the email ID will be not available to me. So that portal will be accessible for me or not?
Yes, it will be.
So after login to the portal, it is not required the email ID and all.
No, it is not required. But you would have to log in with an email ID. But what would happen is, as you have already registered to that partner, to VMware's website from that partner portal ID, so basically VMware will save that credentials on their portal. They would not be going back to your company to validate that whether your portal is still valid or not.
So that will be lifetime for me, no? I can
not
use
lifetime because they might ask you to also, reset your password. And if they ask you to reset your password, you do not have access to that email, you would not be able to reset that password. It is not a lifetime thing. Okay.
But
it is
up to you how much days I can
correct.
without...
I mean, it's like a hit and trial thing. You can use it for certain amount of days. The day, you get a prompt to change your password or that login is not accepted, then you are logged out. You cannot then use that email ID. That's not valid then.
Thank you, sir.
Vaibhav, I have one question. I mean, for freshers, can we get the job of learning this course, or should we have the experience in other organizations also in non-IT background?
No, I think, as a fresher also, you would see on LinkedIn that there are many people who are still hiring freshers for VMware as well. It's not necessary that you need to have a VMware, experience and then only you can do it. I think if you just change, over here for freshers, VMware or something. So if you have VMware knowledge and you are a fresher, I think there still should be an option for you that, you can get, an opportunity.
Okay.
It's not that, you cannot get in.
Otherwise, if you have the experience in other like non-IT background or like any customer support or any other thing, it will be helpful for us?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So you can definitely say that, you're looking to, change your career path, which is absolutely normal because many people change their career paths. I have also changed my career path. I'm still changing my career path. So if you are a support engineer, you try to become something else. If you're doing something else, you try to do something else. And in today's world, everything is, interrelated. It's not that, in VMware, you would not work on Linux or, you would not work on networking. Everything is interrelated. And as you grow, as you expand your horizon, you will be, you would be learning all the technologies. So that's pretty normal in today's world.
Hello, Vaibhav. I have one more question. Can I ask you?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I have saw in one organization they are implementing the new OS with the Jenkins and all. So are you including Jenkins in this course?
No, I'm only talking about VMware data center virtualization, which is
Okay.
basically these components that I would be talking about. So I'm only talking about from a VMware point of view, what a VMware ESXi is, how do you create a virtual machine, vCenter, network storage from the VMware point of view. That is something that I would be talking about. What you are referring to, Jenkins and CI/CD, that basically comes to DevOps.
Okay. Okay.
That is
Understood.
something I'm not doing over here.
Okay.
Hi,
Thank you.
Vaibhav. This is Harish.
Hey, Harish.
Yeah, so I just want to understand, will you be covering distributed switches and
Yes.
deep dive in, VMware like
Yes.
troubleshooting part, VMware Power CLI and
Yes.
all?
Not Power CLI. I can show you Power CLI and I can show you a very quick way on how to get proficient in Power CLI. If you do not have that Power CLI, that I should say experience with you, but I can show you ways, I can show you examples on how you can get going with Power CLI, with a PowerShell. So I can do all that for you. But yes, I would be talking about it and I would be showing you examples. Like, for example, if I talk about PowerShell, I would not be able to show you everything in PowerShell because this is too huge, but related to VMware, I will definitely be talking about it and would be giving you good guidance on how you can take it forward.
Okay, because actually I am VCP certified. I have already done this course and I have, a little bit idea, but I not get the chance to work on VMware that time. So things are, not very much clear to me. But it's been, 5 years back when I attended the training. So in that training, the trainer only covered the install, configure, and manage part only. So they did not cover the troubleshooting part, and I need help in that part only. I can easily manage this.
See, troubleshooting, you need to understand that again, VMware has a dedicated course for troubleshooting. I can talk about troubleshooting. I can give you that what to look at or what the options is, but I cannot talk about a full-fledged troubleshooting. Because for a full-fledged troubleshooting, again, VMware has a 5-day course where they only talk about troubleshooting. Now, over here, I'm not doing that. Here, I'm not, talking about only troubleshooting. Here, I'm focusing more on the data center virtualization as a concept, what the technology is, how do you configure, manage it. And then I do touch base upon PowerShell. I do touch base upon troubleshooting, that if you have to troubleshoot, what should be the way forward, right? Like, for example, if I talk about performance is such a huge topic. We can talk about, days and days about it, what you should configure performance. But so, we cannot talk in depth about performance for 3 or 4 days. But yes, I can definitely talk about I will be talking about it, in my course, that what performance is, how you should look at, what is the performance metric numbers, what you should be looking at. And, you have to do some self-study as well, over here.
Vaibhav, I have one question. For the future classes, how can we register?
So you need to get in touch with Amit. So this is his number. So my request would be if you can reach out to Amit. This number is also available on WhatsApp. So you can reach out to him and he would be able to answer all your questions, that when the batch is starting and what would be the timing, then, all the other queries that you might have.
This is Indian number, correct?
Yes, this is an Indian number. Good that you highlighted. Let me write it over here.
Vaibhav, I have one question. So regarding, VMware, currently I have some hands-on experience on VMware. So in our lab, actually I am from testing background, but in our lab, all the machines are being managed in VMware. So I have some experience managing those VMware, taking backups, restore, but they are using some scripts in PowerShell. So in interview, if I go for any virtualization interview, so they will be asking me for those, need to write those scripts or how it is working, or so.
See, if you talk about PowerShell, it's not very common that, in interview, they would ask about it, to be honest, they would not be asking about PowerShell. But if you do not have a PowerShell background and if you want to learn about it, there is a very good, tool available. There's a very good hack available that I can walk you through, and I can show you examples on how you can do that. So I myself do not have a PowerShell background, and trust me, I had to work on adding an ESXi to to a vCenter, NSX, a vSAN via PowerShell. I had to do that, and I was able to do it, say about in 3 or 4 days, because I know the hack around available on how to get going. You do not have to know everything, in PowerShell to get your way moving forward. There are a lot of things available, via which you can get that going. So in this course of mine, I will be talking about that as well.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
No problem. All right, guys. Any other question if you have, feel free, or we can call it a day. Yeah, Khushi, I did not get your question. Sorry, I'm seeing chat now. I was busy answering questions. If you can unmute yourself, Khushi, and if you can ask, I would have to scroll up to read your message. Yeah, so, okay. Yeah,
Hello,
yeah, you can definitely
Vaibhav.
take this course. Just give me a minute, please. So yeah, Khushi, to answer your question, yes. How do I reply to Khushi over here directly?
Hello, Vaibhav, Gaurav here.
Hey, Gaurav, go ahead.
Actually, I want to ask you, there is any alternative for VMware?
When you talk
Open
about
source?
alternative open source, yes, you have OpenStack available, and that you can use. But again, as an open source community, it has its own pros and cons. I would not say that it's not good, or I would not like to say anything ill about the product. It is a good product, no doubt about it. But every product, when it comes to open source, has pros and cons. With VMware is making sure that they're testing everything. They're making sure that the product is validated and everything is working well. They have a good support. They have a good community reach also. I'm not sure about OpenStack. I'm very sure that the same would be applicable for them as well.
And what about a Proxmox?
Sorry?
Proxmox.
Sorry, I don't know about it. What it is?
Actually, it's the same kind of a OS which gives us a web-based access to the VMs.
Sorry, I don't know what Proxmox is. I would have to Google it up. Now, I've never had a chance to work with that tool.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right, guys. I would call it a day. Let me stop recording.
Thank you, Vaibhav.
No problem.
Thank you, Vaibhav.